play this game with my kids sometimes. I say, you know, because they've started to figure out that the stars out there are suns just like our sun, and that they're very, very far away. And we've started talking about planets going around these suns, and whether there's life on these planets. And I say, I wonder if there's a kid in another part of the universe flying around one of those planets wondering if something is out there. And guess what? You're the one they're wondering about. It's really rather an astonishing thing to think about, to be able as a human being to go on, to reason and love and so forth. These are big picture answers. And when you start talking about it that way, to talk about God as a creationist is not the intelligent design kind of creationist, God who tinkers with the universe like it's a bunch of little gadgets. But it's starting to ask ourselves the question, what kind of story, what kind of vision do we have for the universe, for ourselves in the universe? It can't be the old vision that we're the center of the stage. That's surely not the story here that we can talk about. Modern science is not going to let us get away with that one anymore. So it's a very different story, a very different project. And the only way we're going to get there, and here's my third part now, is to talk about the importance of the stories that we're passing on, the stories that we're re-imaging. Because for religious people, there are these deep stories that we keep retelling, we keep coming back to year in and year out. We rethink them, we expand them, but we still revisit them. What we have to understand is not just that we're biological creatures, but that we are what I call biomythic creatures. We're creatures of myth, we're creatures of story. And if you don't believe that, all you have to do is visit our house any night of the week. I have children that, one of our children is an actor, as you know, and you've seen him on stage. Well, when Hector is out there in The King and I or The Wizard of Oz, our whole household becomes The King and I and The Wizard of Oz, because we have three younger ones who start participating in the dream, in the vision, in the story. And so the music becomes their music. They don't understand all the words, so they get crazy words coming out of their mouths about, the wizard and the king and so forth. But they become the pirates. They become the kings. And they are literally living that story. The story is so powerful. They are living it. Well, why are they living it? Because they are story-making creatures. And that's what we are. That's all myth or meant. And some people are always threatened when they talk about myth in the Bible, they think, well, myth means a lie. No, mythos is simply the Greek word for story. So if you don't like myths, just remember stories. And stories are very important. If you don't think so, don't become an executive in Hollywood, because they won't want you working for them. They're banking on the fact that stories are still very powerful. Heaven Almighty made millions and millions and millions of dollars because it's a powerful story. It's tapping into the old Noah story, but it's a powerful story in its own right. And people live by stories. And most Christians live by stories too. They built the Creation Museum with $29 million. So I'm not saying all stories are good stories. There are stories that are inspiring. There are stories that take us and reveal the depths of our beings. And there are stories that are deceptive and destructive. We have to weigh them. The idea of living by a story, then, is to ask the question, what does it mean, what are we passing on when we do look at those stories of Genesis? What are we saying about the value of human life, or the depths of the universe? What are we saying? And in that sense, we start talking about the big picture and thinking about our place in that. And that's humbling, because the picture is a lot bigger than we thought. But it can also be very inspiring, because we're in a place of great struggle here on this planet. You look at the pale blue dot from Pluto and you realize this is it for us. We're not going to escape anytime soon. And all the wars and struggles and great art, it's all here for us. And so it matters what we do to this place. And if we are believing in our story tradition, then we're believing that it matters that we take care of the world. That's just one example. If you're in other parts of the sciences, whether it's physics and thinking about the way things work, or if you're in medicine or whatever, it matters to do that work. And that's another thing that we're encouraged by those stories to keep doing, not to shut our minds down, but to explore and to become enlightened in that way. There are different dreams that people like to dream. And you have to ask yourself, if you're talking about story, by what story do you live? By what myth do you live? You can spend a whole lifetime figuring this out. Many of us are living by the American dream. You need to wake up from that. That's another evening's talk, I suppose. In ancient times, people lived by dreams of creation and thought about the world that way. Now, some of those dreams were destructive, like the Babylonian creation story. Just one example from the Bible's world. The way they thought about creation was that a god got out there and destroyed the sea goddess for his own power and glory and created the universe. And all of us are here in this universe to serve that god. And we are to be that god's slaves. And of course, making the necessary changes, we are also to be the slaves of the king, who has funded the temple that is telling you that story. So there is an equivalent to the American dream in ancient times. The Babylonian dream is a nightmare of conquest and domination. The one thing that the biblical dream throws out there, the dream of Genesis, is that there is this long struggle to find our purpose in the world. That there is the hope is out there that there will be a purpose, not just individual, but communal. But it's our struggle together to figure out how to do that. And each of those stories in Genesis is devoted to this one idea that survival of the community matters. It's not just the flood story, it's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Hector is now, our boy is just auditioning for Joseph in the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. So the last few days we've all been living out the Joseph story. All of those stories are stories that say what really matters about our world is that we learn to work together, and we learn to struggle against those forces that would destroy the world and life. Whether it's floods or whether it's kings that don't know Joseph and so forth. That is our task in the world. And how we do that today, Heaven Almighty has given me another idea of how we do that. But each of us needs to enter into that story and think about what our purpose is, what is the goal of our communal existence, what's the value of life. And those stories continually challenge us. So if you don't think of God as a creationist in a literal sense, because I say, is God a creationist that way? No. Then you're open to the maybe of the dialogue. But the yes side is what those of us who are Catholic, Christian, we bring to this. What do we bring to the dialogue? If we're not being literal-minded, then we bring these very powerful stories that refuse to say that life is simply dumb luck, meaningless, pointless. The end of one of Richard Dawkins' books, The Evolutionary Biologist I'm talking about, he says, basically the universe is to be called blind, pitiless, and indifferent. And it's a pretty grim sort of way of looking at things. And you can make the case for that. I don't want to say that you can make the case. But I am saying that what we're bringing to the table is this long tradition that says no, life and freedom and justice, these things matter. And our communal project needs to be dedicated to that. And so we will be willing as Catholics to be informed by all the sciences, because that's just another way of helping to make that project grow. And we will be going to do it. All right, so that's my yes, maybe, and no maybe and yes for tonight. And maybe we can engage in a little discussion.